So this video is for Level 3 exam retakers, those that are going to be doing the Level 3 exam again. Over the last 24 hours, I've had the opportunity to review a number of candidates' results that didn't make it, just to see what kind of feedback I had. And the pattern is consistent across all the ones that I've seen, is the AM session. That if you didn't make it, it is the AM session that brought you down, not the PM session. The AM session is critical at Level 3, and it does require some training. Not so much in the content. You can learn the content the same way you did at Level 1, Level 2, but it's how to answer those particular questions. And when you read those questions, you may think, well, I know this stuff. So you start writing and you say, well, I know this and I know that, and there's this to consider and that to consider and all of this stuff. And if you look at your answer, and anybody looking at the answer may say, yeah, you've covered all the bases, but you didn't answer the question. And that's the big issue with the morning session. For every question, there is a specific answer. Yeah, there might be a whole bunch of supporting stuff that you can bring in, but that's not the answer. That's not what they're looking for. They're looking, can you push all of that stuff aside and pull out that exact answer? So there's usually one or two lines of writing that are needed, and that's it. A common theme of the AM session for those that didn't make it was, I ran out of time. I couldn't answer all the questions. Well, if you are writing too much, that's the point. Every question has a number of minutes, and if you're spending more minutes on that question than the minutes allocated, you're doing it wrong. And most likely it's going to hurt you when the graders start looking at it, because they're looking for very specific statements. The more you write, it actually hurts you. Because if you write something, you might write 4 statements, 3 of them right, 1 of them wrong. Well, they'll grade the wrong one first. Say, oh, well, that's wrong. So right there, we're going to say that that was your first statement. So the less you write, the better off you are, and you want to answer the question in the most direct way possible. So the AM session is critical. It does require specific directed AM strategy training. And not just training on the content, not just reinforcing of, well, these are behavioral biases, this is an investor policy statement, this is the required return. All of that stuff is just knowledge that you need to know. But how to answer the question is a very particular strategy. And the AM session is very heavy on portfolio management, especially books 2 and 3. And when I looked at the results and I saw low score on the AM session, I could almost go up to the top chart and look at portfolio management, and it would be the lowest as well, because the AM session heavily tests PM. Well, when I say PM, I shouldn't say PM, portfolio management. Now, the PM session typically wasn't an issue. When you looked at the PM scores, they seemed to be well in line. So knowledge of the content was there. It was just, okay, I'm not answering these questions properly. And then that's it. That's all it is. So we have a number of strategies that you can follow since you're retaking. First of all, before you start going back at the content again, I would say that your efforts are probably at book 2, book 3 for the most part. And I advise everybody start at book 4, then go to book 5 if you're new to Level 3, because those are interesting, they're fun. Book 2 is a long book, and it can be difficult to get through only because it's not that interesting. So staying interested will be your biggest challenge there. But I would, for the retakers, I would say most of your effort will be on book 2 and book 3, and not in trying to get to know as much of the content as possible, but trying to remove as much of the content as possible and get to just the direct points that are trying to be made. So when we talk about an investor's return objective, that usually can be stated in 2, maybe 3 lines, that's it. When we're talking about the risk tolerance, that can usually be stated in 2 lines. So as you go through book 2, what you want to do is you want to try to minimize everything and get to very direct bulleted points on everything. So before you do that, watch the Level 3 seminar, the AM exam strategies I have up on YouTube. The link for that is in the description box. It talks about the last so many years of exams, the common types of keywords you'll expect to find on exams. The determine and justify type question is by far the most popular question you're going to get. Shows you how to answer different questions that have those particular keywords: determine and justify versus calculate versus describe versus discuss. What kind of answers are suitable there? And again, the goal is very short, specific, to the point answers with no extra wording around it, no confusion as to, well, it might be this or it might be that, but it could be this, and we must consider this and this. Yes, in a complex world, that's probably true. But on this exam, they want to say, remove the complexity, give me the simplicity. What is the answer to this question? One sentence or two sentences, not even perfect sentences, bullet points to get to that point. So this will really help you get you in the right mindset of how you want to read the content to extract those very specific points. As far as continuing strategy throughout the year as you get to June 2019, AM style questions, you want to try to practice as many of those as possible. The big problem with doing those, at level 2, when we did vignettes, we could tell if we were right or wrong, and then we could find out why we were wrong. For doing these, what we need when you have a structured response question is you need a very good model answer, so that when you answer it, you can go to the model answer and you could say, how close was I to what the model answer looks like? And oftentimes the model answer will say, well, look, any of these three things would have been acceptable. So there's never just one answer. A good model answer will say, you could have said this, or you could have said this, or you could have said this. But it's still subjective. How can you look at your answer and look at the model answer and say, well, okay, I think I covered most of that. Maybe you did, but maybe not in the right way. So that's the feedback part becomes difficult. How do I know? You have the model answers, but that's typically not enough. I cannot express enough how important it is to have a grader. When you do a mock exam, when you're ready to head into the exam, you'll do an AM session mock exam and you'll send it into a grader who has experience with this, who will then grade it honestly. This is what you would probably get if you submitted this for a live exam. You'd probably get this score, and then follows up with you with a 1-hour session online, a live session, where there's question and answer, give and take, and there's feedback about how you can improve on each of those answers, and what not to do on the exam and what more of to do. And having something like that 2-3 weeks before the exam is absolutely invaluable, because it would be nice to say, as you give an answer, to raise your hand. If you could in the exam, raise your hand, call someone over and say, is this the kind of thing you're looking for? And to get immediate feedback right then. Think of how easy the next set of answers would be. Well, you can't, really. But this is the next closest thing, is the grader. And then we have seminar workshops that we conduct closer to the exam. Last year we did a whole weekend, 2 4-hour sessions on just Book 2, on just how do we answer Book 2 questions, how do we think about Book 2, what are the typical types of questions that we would meet in Book 2. Now when you subscribe to our Level 3, those seminars are posted. We have them up from last year, so you have that benefit as well. And we'll probably do another weekend of seminars as we get closer to the exam. There's no point in doing it now. You want to get it closer to the exam when you've had a lot of practice with these, when you're ready to start to refine your strategy on how you're doing this. So about a month out or 3 weeks out is about the right time to do that. So as you go through the content this year, don't focus so much on trying to know everything. And this is really important for Book 2 more than any other book. Don't try to know everything. Try to cut through all of that stuff and get to those 2 or 3 points that matter for each item. So when we look at the investment policy statement for the individual or the institutional investor, we're looking at both of them, return objectives and risk objectives. Okay, well, for an individual, what are the 1 or 2 points that make a return objective? Now, there's pages that discuss what the return objective is made up of, and you may think, I got to know all this content. It really comes down to a few bullet points, and that's it. So Book 2 is long, it's boring. Yes, I said it, it is boring. For anyone who's been through Book 2, I think you're nodding your head going, yeah, there are parts that are just not interesting at all, and that's the challenge. Out of all of that uninteresting stuff, how do you extract just those key points right there? And that's what the AM exam strategy session is for. That's what the the seminar we did for book 2 is to extract those points out of there. So hopefully that reorients you for the year coming up. I don't know that you really need a pep talk on the content, on how to learn the content. You've done level 1, you've done level 2, you got through level 2. So really the content at level 3 is not challenging in terms of if you had to write vignettes with multiple choice questions. Level 3 should not stop you at this point. If you've done level 2, level 3, if you approach that with the same way, level 3 is a breeze. It's the AM session where you have to say, okay, well now, it's not how much I know, it's how little I can go in the door with. Those very key points that if I'm asked this, these are the points. If I'm asked about this thing, these are the points. If I'm asked about that thing, these are the points. And yeah, so level 2 is all about compression of the content. Book 2 in the exam is more about the compression of the content than it is about trying to get as much of it into your brain as possible. So hopefully that helps reset you on where you're going. If you're a retaker, you're really focusing on the AM session and the strategies to answer those questions. And once you get into the groove of answering those types of questions with 2-3 bullet points, there you go. So your goal in level 3 is to reduce the amount of content in your mind as you go in and not increase it. Okay, ciao.